Today's episode of the Just Keep Swimming podcast is brought to you by Audible. Audible is an online audiobook and podcast service offering over 10,000 books and the ability to listen to your favorite podcasts, including the Just Keep Swimming podcast. I personally use Audible all the time and suggest you take a listen to Intentional Living by John C. Maxwell. In this book, Mr. Maxwell shares his story on how he was able to live a noble and purposeful life and gives you tips and tricks so you can do the same. So please start your 30-day free trial now at www.audibletrial.com/JKS podcast, all lowercase. Again, that is www.audibletrial.com/JKS podcast. And if you have any more questions or concerns for the Just Keep Swimming podcast, you're always welcome to reach out to us on Facebook or at Instagram at Just Keep Swimming _podcast, or you can email us at jkspodcast702@gmail.com. And with that out the way, let's dive into it. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, and welcome to the Just Keep Swimming podcast. It's your friend, your boy, your host, Mr. Adrian Jackson, back at it again with another great episode for you. And you already know who's with me. It's the man, the myth, the legend. It's Mr. 13, dropping hot beats for the city as always. So make sure you guys keep up with his latest projects no matter what. So today, ladies and gentlemen, I want to talk about advocating for others. What is it to advocate for others, and how do we advocate for others? And of course, why do we advocate for others? So me personally, I like to start off with the why. So as you guys know, there's plenty of times in life where we see people are afraid to stand up for themselves. They're afraid to speak up. You know, a lot of times the authority makes people scared to ask certain questions or say things that they feel needs to be said because they're afraid of what's going to happen or what type of repercussions that's going to come with it. And I think that a lot of times we need to learn when and where to stand up for others and how to do it properly, because advocating for others is sometimes needed in this world, definitely to build that amazing human connection that we have in this amazing world. Two ways I feel I advocated for others this week. One was with the Enough Said backpack drive. Big shout out to everybody that came out and got some backpacks and donated. But you're probably like, how was that advocating? Well, my mindset is school supplies are expensive. You guys have to, everybody with kids, you have to buy supplies every single year to get ready for the new school year. These prices go up, they down, they fluctuate. Backpacks aren't cheap, materials aren't cheap. So what we did to advocate for the community was have a backpack drive and give out school supplies to the community to help out those that needed the help, and I think that was an amazing way to advocate for the community and, support others in need at the time that they need it. A lot of times we want to advocate for others, but we'll advocate too late. Or, we try to fight a battle way too soon before we even get there and give the person the opportunity to stand up for themselves, So I think, timing is one thing that we need to focus on when it comes to advocating for others. And I think that leads to my next story. So recently my lady was in the hospital for a few days, and, doctors, nurses, all different type of people coming in to talk to her and, asking her questions and, giving her medicine and all that jazz, But one thing I wanted to make sure that happened while I was there was there was no questions we had. Like if there was any type of question that we had that, she would have brought up to me personally, when the nurse walked in and she was afraid to ask the question, I would ask the question for her because, she doesn't want to ruffle the feathers or, think that asking this question is going to make these nurses be mean to her and now she's going to get bad service. And I'm like, no, it's our job to ask these questions right now. So we're going to ask these questions and we're going to figure out what the answers is, because we're not going to just sit back and let these people play with our health. We're going to ask these questions. And it was like I was giving voice to the voiceless. And I think that's my first main point when it comes to advocating for others. Some people don't have the ability to speak up. They're scared to speak up. Maybe they don't have the right mindset or the resources to do that. And that's why I use my platform to advocate for others. We use Enough Said to advocate for the community and for the kids in need so they can get ready and go back to school ready and not ready. Last thing you want the students to do or to feel is that they went back to school and they don't have what they need to make it through school. They don't have the resources they need. And then, speaking up for people that are afraid to speak up for themselves. I do that with my students all the time where, they want to ask something, but they're afraid to ask. They're scared to ask. And it's like, okay, call the number and I'll talk for you. You sit right here and you're going to see how I talk to these people and see that there's nothing to be afraid of. We can speak our minds and ask questions without that fear of repercussions, because at the end of the day, we need to ask questions. We need to speak our mind and stand up for ourselves, So then that also leads to the next step of hoping that me advocating for others will make others want to advocate for others. So a lot of times what we need is an example. We need to see that somebody isn't afraid to stand up to anything. And one example that comes to my mind is my father, for sure. Like my father, he's not a outspoken man. He uses his words wisely, but when he does get in that mindset of, okay, you want me to fight? I'm about to fight for my family. Then it is like, stand out the way, because there's a storm coming, because my dad's going to fight for his no matter what. And a great example was a long time ago when I was in high school. I remember I was driving this truck and I need to go, and we needed some type of work on the truck. I can't tell you exactly what it was. Something with spark plugs, but we couldn't reach them. So we need to let them actually pull the engine up and do some stuff with spark plugs. Anyway, so I took the truck to the shop, and then I was in charge of picking it up, and we picked it up, and I thought it was cool. It was running right and everything. But then my pops got in the truck, and when he got in the truck, he was like, what is this? Why does it look so jacked up? What is this thing falling apart? Something ain't right. Man, me and my dad jumped in that truck and we smashed down to the auto shop, and then he just jumped out and he was like, yo, what's going on here? Blah, blah, blah. My son brought this down here and y'all said it was all good, but look at this, look at that, look at this and that and the third. Yeah, we're not taking this type of service. Y'all need to get this fixed right now, or I need a refund. And, he was pretty much going off. And, him advocating and standing up for me is what made me feel like, you know what? I need to start doing the same for others. If I'm not afraid to speak up or feel like I have the right to speak up in this situation, let me speak up. Let me say something in this situation, because somebody may be afraid to speak up, and let me just stand up for them. And I think that right there it creates that amazing ripple effect, because I find myself doing that in places where people feel I shouldn't speak up. Like, for example, one of the companies I worked at, they kept promising us raises as always, but every time we get to a company-wide meeting, they never talk about it. So at some point, man, I got over it, and I was like, I'm about to ask this question. And I even told my boss, hey, if I get in trouble, oh well, but I'm about to ask this question. So I actually rose my hand in the company-wide, all the employees there meeting, and I asked, hey, what's up with our raises? You told us we were getting raises this time. That still hasn't happened yet. Can you give us an update? Is this a problem with the company? Like, is there something that we need to know that you guys aren't telling us? What's up? And people, the higher management, they didn't like that, of course, at all, because they felt like I was throwing them under the bus. But at the same time, everybody else, all the the employees on my level, they appreciate it, because they all want to ask about their raise. Of course, everybody wants to ask about their raise, but they're afraid to ask because they feel like, oh, if I ask, that's going to be a sign of me getting fired, or if I ask, they're going to see I'm disgruntled or something like that. I'm like, no, that's not the case at all. It's a question. If I can't ask a question, then there's a problem here in this situation right now, and it was a lot of times when they were like, oh, well, just come to the side and ask. And I was like, I would, ma'am, but there's a lot of people in this room that want the same answers that I'm asking for right now. So it'll be wrong for me to step to the side and ask you one-on-one when all these other people want to know the same answers that I'm looking for. And that right there was me advocating for others, advocating for the community that we're in. And I felt that just made a stronger community, which is another step that advocating for others will bring. It just brings in that strong community and connects everybody and shows people that, hey, you're not in this battle by yourself. You do have somebody that you can trust in this battle that's willing to do the hard things that you may be afraid to do. And it may encourage that person to not be afraid to do it, because when the other meetings came around, I didn't have to be the one to ask about the raises, because somebody else would raise their hand and ask about it now, because they probably seen the confidence that I put in that first time. And it's like, you know what? Somebody's going to fight for us. I'm going to fight for us as well. And I think that right there is what made our team so much stronger and so much better. Even though the company didn't survive, there's a lot of people from that company that I still talk to, that I still communicate with, because we showed that we had each other back in a hard time. We backed each other up, So yes, that's another thing I wanted to share. Just build that strong community. And last but not least is one of my favorite ideas is advocating for others. That right there changes history. That can change the course of an amazing story that is going on right now. Prime example, Martin Luther King. Everybody knows who Martin Luther King Jr. is. He is the father of the civil rights movement. We all talk about how, he marched on Virginia, he marched on all the capitals and did all these amazing speeches. But, one thing I don't think we ever realized is that Martin Luther King was advocating for all black people at that time, for black rights, for the black movement, for equal rights. He wasn't just advocating for black people. He was advocating for humans in general. Anybody that was being treated wrong in America during that time, he was advocating for them. Yes, he was a black man, but I'm sure he advocated for the Asians and the Hispanics and everybody that was being treated wrong in that time. And that one voice changed a generation. Now he has his own holiday in the book. Everybody knows this. Almost in every single city, he has his own street named after him, because that's how powerful his name was. He was advocating for what was wrong, no matter what it brought him. It brought him death, sadly. But that him advocating made the community so much stronger. So when he did pass, people learned to grasp hands and say, we're going to stand together in honor of Mr. King. And I feel that if he would never advocated for others, he would have never have made it his way. His name would have never been as big. He would have just been, if he was selfish, it wouldn't have worked out, and advocating for others is a non-selfish move. You have to truly step out of yourself, not be afraid of the consequences that's going to come your way, because you're a human and you're going to stand up for the human right no matter what. So this leads me to an amazing story that I want to share with you guys and wrap it all up with, which really brought the episode to my mind. So there's an amazing story of a doctor was giving surgery on a lady, pretty much. And what happened was, while the doctor was giving surgery, he was about to use his vacuum to suck out some of the things that need to be sucked out. So the doctor told the nurse to put the vacuum up to level 8. Let's just use number 8. So let's put the vacuum up to level 8. So originally the nurse did put up to 8, but then when she saw how powerful the suction was, she turned it down to 5. And the doctor was like, wait, what's going on? Why is it not at 8? And the nurse said, well, that right there is an unsafe level, because you can suck out something that's not supposed to be needed to be sucked out, because that suction level is so high. And the doctor said, no, I always use it on level 8. We're going to put it on level 8. And the nurse refused to turn the system on to level 8. So the doctor pulled the nurse to the side and said, like, what is going on? Why are you doing this? And had started, argue with her, saying she's being insubordinate. I told you to do this. You need to do this. And the nurse said, I understand how you feel, but what I'm trying to tell you is that that level is not safe, definitely for what's going on right now. And the last thing we want to do is cause more harm than good, trying to fix what's going on with this person. So we're not going to put it on 8. We're going to leave it at 5. And the doctor got to the point where he was so irritated that he was like, it must not be the nurse standing up for the patient, but it must be some type of regulation that I don't know about. So he started to ask everybody, is there some type of new code, new conduct, something we're supposed to be following? And everybody's like, no, there's nothing new. She's just standing up for the rights of these people. And it's like, you can't be mad at her. This nurse risked her job. You know, she fought against a surgeon to make sure that the person that is under, that can't speak up for themselves, that can't stand up for themselves right now, doesn't get mistreated in this situation and get more harm caused to her than what there need to be. And I think that right there is like so beautiful. The idea that a nurse was willing to risk her job and fought against her boss to make sure that the person that they're working on gets the service that they deserve and walks out of that room alive and not worse than what they came in with. And I think that right there is the true definition of advocating for others. The person on the surgery table can't speak, they can't talk, they don't even know what's going on in the situation. But the nurse sat there and said, I see what's going on and I'm not about to let you be treated wrong. If I have the voice to use it, I'm going to use my voice and I'm going to stand up for somebody who's not able to stand up for themselves. And I think that right there is what makes an amazing, strong world, you know, that what makes the community, that what really builds hearts, you know, like you always hear the term, you can't trust nobody. And I think that term is 100% wrong, because without trust, there is no love. You know, we have to learn to love and trust others. Like right now, I know that Mr. 13 is going to do an amazing edit on this episode and get it back out to me. If I couldn't trust him to do that, I wouldn't be sending him the episode. But I love bro and I trust bro is going to do what we need to do, you know, and I'm going to continue to advocate for us. If he can't make it, I'm going to advocate for the podcast. If I can't make it, he going to advocate for the podcast. But you know what? We're always going to continue to stand up for each other and do what we have to do. So, you know, that's my goal for you guys today, or this week. You know, stand up for somebody who you feel can't speak up. You know, I know we stand up for our children all the time in the younger generation, but what about that older person that's being mistreated and you see them being mistreated and wrong right in front of you? You know, stand up for that person, stand up for them, let them know what's going on. You know, the world changes so much and people are out the loop and don't understand what's going to happen. Don't let them just be lost. You know, help them out, show them the right way. If they're being talked to wrong or being mistreated, tell them that, you know, stand up for them. Yo, don't treat this person like this. You're wrong for lying to this person and trying to manipulate this person. We're not going to allow that. You know, we're going to do the right thing no matter what. Even if it's hard, we're going to continue to do the right thing. So, yeah, ladies and gentlemen, that's my message for you guys today. And that's why I just advocate for you guys today, just to try to stand up for those who you feel are being mistreated. When you see wrong happening, stand up for that person, help them out. You know, we're not doing this to be a superhero. We're doing this just to be human, because at the end of the day, if we were in that situation, we want somebody to stand up for us. You know, if I was in the hospital drugged up and couldn't really comprehend things correctly, I would love to know that I have somebody in my corner that's going to advocate for me and make sure that I don't get mistreated when I'm in this stage where I can't really understand what's happening or comprehend or really just control the outcome. You know, just having somebody stand up for me all the time just feels so good. And that's why I stand up for others, and I always advocate for others first. You know, I've been fired from many of jobs for advocating for others, but you know what? The world, it works out in an amazing way, because now I have a job where I get paid to advocate for others. You know, I'm always going to stand up for the students that come and look up to me. You know, like I was saying, I'm on a field trip. Y'all are my students. I'm going to look out for you all the way until I get you back to school and beyond. So yes, no question about that at all. But yeah, ladies and gentlemen, if this message resonated with you guys today, you know, share a story with us. Was there a time when you had to advocate for another, you had to stand up for another, you know, you had to fight for the rights of somebody who didn't even know they had these rights? You know, if you do have a story like that, share it with us. We would love to hear it. We would love to share it on the program and just, you know, let the world know that there's nothing wrong with standing up for another person. You know, we need more people like this in today's world. But yes, ladies and gentlemen, so with all that being said, we hope you guys have a great day, a marvelous afternoon, a splendid evening. Big shout out again to the Nuff Said Youth Organization for the amazing backpack drive and everybody that donated. We sent you guys 1,000 thank yous. Just some numbers, we was able to give out over 90 backpacks. We gave out workbooks, we gave out pens, pencils, color pencils. Everybody that showed up walked out with a backpack, and we even did some personal delivery to backpacks for family, of course. So yes, thank you guys all so much for supporting. Look out for the Most Enough Said events coming, as well as the Just Keep Swimming podcast. You already know we got new stuff coming for you guys as always. Thank you guys all for the amazing support, all the amazing love, and all you continue to do for us in this amazing community. And we're going to do the best we can to continue to bring positive messages to you guys. So yes, with all that being said, hope you guys have a great day, a marvelous afternoon, a splendid evening, and remember to just keep swimming.